Think you know this 90s classic? Prove it. Who plays the meticulous bodyguard Frank Farmer? Who plays the pop superstar Rachel Marron? What government agency did Frank Farmer previously work for? Which U.S. president does Frank express guilt over not being present to protect during an assassination attempt? Why is Frank initially brought in to assess Rachel's security? What is the name of Rachel's young son? Who is Rachel's jealous older sister? What object does Frank use to slice a silk scarf to demonstrate a security risk? What movie do Frank and Rachel watch on their first date? What happens during Rachel's performance at a club in Miami? Who rescues Rachel from the stage during the Miami riot? Why does Frank break off his romantic relationship with Rachel? Who is Rachel's original physically imposing bodyguard whom Frank fights in the kitchen? Where does Frank take Rachel and her family to hide out? Who actually hired the professional hitman to kill Rachel? Why did the person who hired the hitman want Rachel dead? Who is mistakenly killed by the hitman at the snowy cabin? What is the name of the professional hitman who targets Rachel? What event is Rachel attending during the film's climax? What disguise does the hitman use to get close to Rachel at the awards ceremony? What does Frank do when the hitman fires his weapon at Rachel? What happens to the hitman at the awards ceremony? What iconic song plays as Rachel stops the plane to say goodbye to Frank? Who is Frank protecting at the very end of the movie? What communication device does Frank give to Fletcher? What explodes at the cabin, nearly killing Fletcher? What does Rachel do when she gets overwhelmed by fear while presenting at the awards? Who is Rachel's publicist who constantly complains about Frank's strict security measures? What does Frank do to Rachel's estate immediately after taking the job? What vehicle does Frank teach Rachel's chauffeur, Dan, how to drive evasively? What does Frank find in Rachel's bed that makes him realize the stalker breached the house? Which character tries to pay the hitman to call off the assassination, but is told it's too late? What award is Rachel nominated for at the ceremony in the climax? How did Frank and the hitman, Greg Portman, know each other before the events of the movie? What does Rachel do after initially boarding her private jet at the end of the film? What song does Rachel perform at the Miami Club right before the crowd riots? What is the name of Frank's father who lives at the snowy cabin? What is Rachel's attitude toward Frank when he first arrives to protect her? Why does Frank initially turn down the job to protect Rachel? In the final scene, what is Frank holding while keeping watch over his new client?